Is it dangerous to be having those just sit right in front of us at the table? We're going to be staring at them the whole time. A caramel salt. Wait, what is this? A caramel salted caramel chocolate cupcake and chocolate pudding. Yeah, that's like torturous.
Oh, that whole thing is the chocolate pudding, all of it together, and those are the little sprinkles.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
and then the vegan buttercream. Who even knew that existed?
Wow.
What do you think they put in vegan buttercream? Do you want to know? Do you even want to know?
No. I don't want to know, really. If it's like the cheese that we just had and the cream that we just had, it's good.
And hopefully it won't make us gassy. This could get really interesting.
Yes,
really quickly.
Depends on how sensitive your microphone is.
It is sitting in the middle of the table.
Yeah.
We'll keep it.
So whether everybody else can hear whether we're gassy or not.
The interview was going really great until about 15 minutes in when the cashew cheese kicked in. Oh my God, can you imagine? About 6 months ago at the PR Summit, have you ever been at the PR Summit in San Francisco? Anyway, I was speaking and I wore this like really long blue, relatively see-through skirt in like if there's sun shining through. And so I knew like there were big windows in the auditorium, and so I wore this like skirt under it, like a kind of a slip type of thing. Mm-hmm. So like halfway through the presentation, I'm like I kind of move a lot when I present, so I'm like walking back and forth, and as I'm walking, my skirt is slipping up and up and up and up, and as it's slipping up, all of a sudden I can like feel this like sunbeam on my back, and I'm like, oh my God, this is not happening. At the moment that my skirt's going up underneath the like long sheer skirt, the sun's starting to shine in San Francisco.
So now we can see everything.
Now you can see everything. So I'm literally standing in the middle of the thing, and I'm kind of like, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go for the joke, and I'm just gonna say, excuse me, I'm having like a minor wardrobe malfunction, and I totally like just pulled it down in front of everyone and got a laugh and some tweets. And anyway, are you a House of Cards person too?
Yes.
You started watching the third season?
I have.
Okay.
And then Netflix went down, on Friday.
No. Oh, because of it.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And everybody was tweeting, is that people, how do you launch something like that and not be ready for the fact that all of us, the yahoos, are going to jump on there and watch?
Yeah, it's like Tech 101.
Yeah. Anyway, but it was back this morning, so I finished the episode.
Are you binge watching it, or are you watching it like episode by episode?
I would love to binge watch it, but I didn't have the time this weekend.
Yeah, it is kind of a time commitment.
I started that episode, and then I got a call, and I had to go somewhere at 6 o'clock on Friday night. So I'm in the middle of the first episode of House of Cards.
Do you understand what's going on?
Why are you calling me? And the guy had to he had to bribe me to go. But I did go.
Was it good? It was a meeting or like a...
It was a meeting. Wow. But he kind of really said, if you come now, I'll do this and this and this for you. So I went.
But yeah, talk a little bit about the state of the industry, state of the union.
You know, PRSA here in LA, every year at the end of January, they have a big meeting which is called the State of PR. And this year they had an interesting panel, I thought, and we spoke a lot about storytelling and content and digital, and the people that were on the panel, I was actually the only PR person on the panel. Everybody else there were a couple of client-side people, but there were more marketing people than there were PR people. But you can see that blurring of the lines.
Yeah.
Definitely happening. When you see people like Weber Shandwick hiring advertising execs and starting their own ad section specifically for paid. And paid has been such anathema to PR for so many years. Oh no, we don't do that, you know. But they have to. They absolutely have to now. You have to embrace the whole thing of paid, earned, owned, and shared.
Peso.
Yes.
Peso.
Yeah. Or we could call it the pose.
What other words can we call it? ESOP?
Yes.
See how smart we really are. How many words can we make out of P, E, S, and O?
Well, for me, it starts with owned. You have to produce the content. Then it gets earned, hopefully. Then you should be pushing it with paid. You should be amplifying it, and then it will get shared. For me, that's the sequence.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think that oftentimes it happens that it's shared kind of would inform where you do the paid, because depending on the messages and the things that are getting picked up via owned and earned, then you would see. I mean, I think share, Twitter and Facebook and all those other things are often a proxy for what's resonating with your audience.
Right.
And we see that a lot with, looking at the data from our analyst product. It is, hypothetically, PR could be informing paid all of the time, because paid, a lot of times you're just looking at SEO and you're not necessarily understanding like what's resonating with the audience. You're trying a bunch of different things first.
Right.
Anyway.
So they're still in that let's throw the spaghetti against the wall thing. Where, as you say, you can do the split testing, but it's still you starting with some idea. And it's let's see if this one works or that one works. But I totally believe that your whole content strategy should be informed by the analytics. Because if you know what's needed and wanted, it's not like, oh, I just had a bright idea, let's see if it'll fly. You actually know that that's what people will respond to.
Right.
I read a really good post this morning about using Twitter to test headlines. And so if you just have an idea for a blog post or an article or whatever, and so say we wanted to write about PR and measurement, then if you write 2 or 3 different headlines and tweet them, you can then see which one gets more response, which one reaches more people, which one gets retweeted more times. And then if you can see that already one of them is really getting some response, that would be a good one to make that the headline of the post.
Interesting.
I thought that was pretty clever.
Yeah, that is clever, because I feel like people often they do paid ads to A/B test. So they'll test with advertising to see what the messages are. But yeah, that is interesting.
Well, I very strongly believe that you have to, whatever you're doing in PR, you have to have it tied back to the business goals. And we've got to be looking at outcomes. For all these years that I've been doing PR, it's only been outputs. So we can say, I did so many blog posts, I did so many press releases, we had so many events, we had so many bums in seats, we're doing our job. But that's what we're doing. We're not counting the effect.
Bums meaning bottoms, not homeless people.
Sorry. Yes.
I love it. Please keep it. What's the other word I wanted you to say? Buggered?
Buggered, yes.
Okay.
Well, yes, of course. If you're in England, that's not a good thing to be. But there you go.
Bums in seats.
Bums in seats.
I can see it as a headline right now.
Well, it's like fanny pack. Where I come from, a fanny is not that's something else entirely. When I came here and people talk about fanny packs, I was like, really? Okay,
Actually,
don't worry about that.
I don't know what that means. I think it was because I think it's the same in New Zealand.
Yes.
I spent a ton of time in New Zealand with my older brother and used to live there with his family, and I remember his wife telling me that. I was like, oh my God. Yeah. Anyway,
so I believe that you should have a goal that is measurable, and it's not vague. It's not just, I want to raise awareness.
Facebook likes.
I want more Facebook likes. No, I want you to know exactly where it is you want to go. Where are you now? And where do you want to be? In what period of time? So that you can figure out how you're going to get there, and you can actually track that progress and see what's happening. So yes, likes and shares are important, because that's the shared, and in a way it's earned, but we're not talking about earned traditional, but it's earned social. So you still have to look at that. It is important that people are responding and engaging and sharing your content. But what else are they doing? So if I see this amazing post that I liked so much, did I tell anybody about it? I shared it, but was there anything else? Is there something I could have done? Can you put in some kind of call to action? Download this. Did I visit the site? Because you have to be able to track through to that business goal. Because otherwise, what are we doing?
Yeah, we were talking about it at Mike's game earlier, which it's like, imagine playing a soccer game and just running around there's no goals and people are just running around kicking the ball, like, we're just gonna like keep kicking the ball around and maybe it goes over here and we're not. I mean, it sounds ridiculous when you put it in a term, like in an analogy of a soccer game, but that is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
We're just running around like throwing content where we think we should, or what's worse, I think, which happens a lot, and in the defense of PR people, it's been the way it is for so long, but we got a media hit, isn't that great, let's show our client, but beyond that, it's really, we can't tell you what it actually did for your business, right. Or we can't show you what to do next, and now that's even more important, is the insights piece of it.
That's a really, really important piece of it, I believe. And I went to a web analytics conference, I want to say almost 10 years ago in Santa Barbara. And the guy that did the keynote speech was talking about, it was titled When Darren Meets Dilbert, and kind of the marketing, PR, and the tech. And he was specifically talking about analytics. But he was saying that there's such a gap that it's as though we're speaking different languages. And if you can be that person who can actually interpret between the two and pull out those actionable insights, because otherwise I've seen this with clients, they get completely overwhelmed, their eyes glaze over. Yeah. So you say, well, do you have analytics? Oh yeah, look, we have this amazing report. Okay, and what does it mean? What are you doing with it? Well, the thing went up, okay.
Up and to the right.
And now what? But they really don't. But if you can actually say to somebody, you see over here, there are a whole bunch of people talking about this, mm-hmm. and that indicates there's a gap in the market, and you have experts who know about that. So you could do this and this and this and this. So one example that I think was really a clever one is Rosetta Stone. They discovered from doing all their analytics that people over the age of 50 talk about their product in a very different way from everybody else. They talk about it all in the context of keeping your brain active and alive and staving off dementia and Alzheimer's. That's why they're doing it.
Right.
They're not learning Italian to go on a cruise and pick up some hot Italian guy.
They could be doing that undercover.
Could be doing that,
undercover.
yes.
They're like, it's part of my dementia.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't be a bad side effect.
I've heard that before.
But they were really smart. When they figured that out, they did something with it. They went to AARP.
I remember reading about this. It was a case study.
And they made a whole content partnership with them, did things at their conference. They hired an award-winning science writer to write white papers for them, backing up with all the science. And they've now bought FitBrain, and they're going in a completely new direction. They still have their whole business that hasn't gone away, but they have this other thing that they're doing. And the marketing guy told me that this thing is converting 3 times more than their normal marketing does.
No, I believe that. Well, and I think that just the lesson from that is, I always think too, so much of PR is about listening.
Right.
So it's about listening to your audience or what people are saying, and then going and looking at the data to say, how do those things map to each other? And do we have, I think also, and the Rosetta Stone is a good example of something that's worked well. I don't know if you have any examples of other things that haven't worked so well, but I think the oftentimes what happens in PR is we make false correlations between things because we just want something.
Right.
We want something to matter. So we think, oh, that seems to be popular on in a social environment, or someone, is writing about that, therefore that is the most important thing. So I think we have to go, like you're saying, a little bit deeper.
Right.
And analytics allows for us to do that. And then a lot of that is figuring out, are those correlations correct? What is the, I guess on a scale of like 1 to 10, how accurate is that? But a lot of this is going to be anecdotal and somewhat qualitative.
Right.
No matter what. I mean, you can't, it's hard to quantify everything, but I think it goes back to what we were talking about before. It's the critical thinking around how are you looking at this from a holistic standpoint, and then looking at all the various components from data to content to social, and then figuring out how to layer those on top of each other to figure out something that you can give the client or your direct report to say, this is what we should do next. I mean,
Right.
I think that's what it's about.
I totally agree. And I remember in the early days when I started doing this, I had content partnerships with 3 or 4 different big websites that I used to write for. And there was one that I personally was convinced was the best one, because they were big and they had an audience that was supposedly my audience, and must be right, that must be the best one. So I used to put a lot of attention and resources and effort into making sure that I had good content for them, and always kind of put them at the top of the list if I had things to do. And then when I started looking at analytics, what I discovered that I get almost no traffic from this place. Mm-hmm. And there were other places that I was pretty much like, meh, okay, I'll write something for you if I have the time. Every time I wrote from them, I would get a huge amount of traffic, and people would download stuff or whatever. I was definitely getting much more ROI there than I was here. And you go, oh, I was completely wrong.
Yeah. Well, that's from a client standpoint, that's as a PR person, when you're saying, you know what, like, you may think that being in the New York Times is great for your ego, but it does shit for your business.
Right.
It's not where you need to be. You need to be, on the influencer blogs or trade
Right.
publications, or even spending an extraordinary amount of time in the social sphere, creating content there and having conversations. And I think that what data does is allows us to see where we have made those false assumptions.
Right. Absolutely.
More than anything. I want to talk a little bit about, I know you can't say the university, but I do want to talk a little bit about, from an education standpoint, how we need to be educating, it sounds so cheesy, but the PR people of the future. Because I have experienced the same thing you have, which is that it's just behind in terms of what we're actually hiring for. So you really need someone who understands X, Y, and Z, but what we're getting is someone who understands A, B, and C. So maybe talk a little bit about that and your experience with teaching and frustrations around teaching.
Yeah, I have taught at the university level for a long time. Before I came here, that was what I was doing.
Before you came from Texas, obviously, because
yes, right, exactly, South Africa. Yeah, I was teaching PR for the University of South Africa, and I have, until like 3 years ago, I hadn't done any here, but I have been in touch with a lot of professors. So I'm aware of what they're teaching in the schools. And I do guest lectures at places like Cal State Fullerton and different other universities. And I'm very aware of kind of the difficulties of these students as they graduate, because most of them are still being taught very traditional PR. And I just a week ago spoke at the Western District Conference for PRSSA. It's the Student Association of the Public Relations Society of America. They have about 11,000 student members on campuses all over the country. So this was Western District, which is here up the West Coast, I think Arizona, Utah, like that. And they had a couple of hundred students there. And I was talking about digital and the skills that you need to succeed with digital and to get a job. And a lot of them spoke to me afterwards and said, where do we learn this?
Oh, God.
We just don't even know where to go. So they're not being taught.
They're in university, though, at this.
They're about to graduate in May.
Wow.
Yeah, they're about to graduate.
With no skill, with no applicable skills.
Well, they have all the core.
Right.
They have all the core skills of PR. But they're very little in the way of digital. And it was an eye-opener for them because they think they're digital natives. So they're like, oh yeah, I totally get it. I understand all of that. But I was talking to them about using it as a business strategy. Yes, I know that you know what Facebook is and how to post on Facebook and how to talk to your friends and post silly pictures when you're on spring break that you shouldn't be doing anyway.
Yes. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, never would have done that. But when you start to look at it from a really serious business strategy, so if I were to say to you, okay, here's client A, go and do a social strategy for them. Produce all their content, post, tweet, whatever, so that it meets their business goals and actually produces a result. They go pale and start to shake because it's like, oh shit, that's a little different.
Yeah. Right. Well, because for social is about, it kind of exists in a vacuum. It's like, I'm here right now, and this is what I'm doing, boom. And this is how I feel right now. Or this is like the outfit I'm wearing, or this is who I'm with. You're not ever really thinking long term.
No.
At least when you are a digital, that is the disadvantage of being digital native, because we don't think that way, because I'm always thinking like, oh God, like if I post this photo, what's it going to mean, 2 years down the road for me?
Right.
I've obviously deleted any photos I would think. I'm just kidding. No, I post only appropriate photos. But in truth, it's like there's a disadvantage to that for them because they don't actually understand that stuff sticks around forever.
And in many ways, I think they just don't really understand that bigger picture, because there was that story of a young woman who was hired at a media company. It was a digital media company, but a big one. And she was really excited, and she went right out of the interview where she got the job and posted it on all her personal social accounts. Yeah, I just got hired by blah, blah. And this is my job, and this is how much I'm going to be earning, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And half an hour later, she didn't have a job. They called her back and said, don't bother coming in. You're not hired. And she was really totally speechless. Why? I was excited. I was sharing it with my friends. It's a personal thing. Well, no, it really isn't. And did you think that they weren't watching?
Right.
Of course they're watching. Everybody's watching. When it comes to hiring, they're looking at all your social. Yeah. They really are.
That's scary too, if you think about it.
Yeah.
But also on the same, and this is like a totally different, this is kind of a tangent, but in some ways it brings culpability back into culture in a certain sense.
Yeah.
Because some of that's good. Like if you're looking at someone's social, and you can find anything now, really. So I think in some sense that's good. But I yet don't think people between the ages of 15 and 22 understand that.
No. They do feel it's personal and other people shouldn't be looking at it. They don't really have the viewpoint that it's public. And my advice to them always is, you have to just think that you're standing on a stage in a huge stadium with 10,000 people. And don't say anything that you wouldn't say under those circumstances. And don't say anything that you wouldn't want your boss or your mother to see, because they sure as hell are going to see it.
Yeah.
They are. There's just that's how it is today.
Yeah.
The other part of it is that in terms of getting hired and the skills, I talk to a lot of people in recruitment who focus specifically on communications and PR. And they have all told me the first question is digital skills and social ability, not personal business. And
explain digital a little bit more, because we talked about it earlier, but what are those things specifically when you talk about digital? Because it can mean a million things.
Well, they have to be able to distribute their content online. So where you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, can you build a WordPress blog? Do you know how to work with other influencers online? Can you post stuff onto other sites that will show up in Google? Do you know how to SEO that content so that it gets visible digitally?
Like optimizing content. You were even saying, I think basic graphic design skills.
Graphic design,
and
video.
how to use iMovie and
yes,
all
of
those
that.
other things.
All those things. Those are digital skills. And then I spoke not that long ago to a guy who owns a boutique PR company, but it's a fairly big one. And he said that really resonated with him because a while ago they had to lay somebody off. And when they sat and talked about it and made the decision, the person that they chose was the one with the fewest digital skills. So coming in and going out, it's really important, those digital skills. So I worry about these kids that have just spent 4 years at school, paid a heap of money, and when they walk into that first job and someone says to them, can you create an image, can you make an infographic, can you make something that would get a lot of attraction on Pinterest, can you make a video that you can put on YouTube that would get 100,000 views? Do you know how to do that?
Right. Well, it's almost like I'm like a huge fan of analogies because I'm a dork. But, it's like you go to med school to become a surgeon and you like know how to cut open a box with scissors, but you don't actually know how to use them in surgery. Or, you know how to use all the tools for various things that have nothing to do whatsoever with what you're walking into. And I think that's the problem. It's like they actually have the skills from a personal standpoint of how to do that stuff, and they think that they understand what it means. But in a business environment and when you have to actually apply it to things that have huge consequences, frankly,
Right.
They're either misusing it or not understanding the implications of what they're doing. Which, for companies now, I also don't think want to expend a tremendous amount of resources in training. I think that historically companies would send someone through a 3 to 6 month training period where they'd have a mentor and all this other stuff. But now, budgets are smaller. People want to hire, relatively new market entrants with skills that can be applied right away.
Yeah. And yet there was a study that was just out this week that says almost 80% of the companies polled said they are going to be increasing their digital marketing budget in 2015. But over a third of them said the reason that they're not doing as well as they think they should be is a lack of skills.
Yeah. It's so weird though how much of a disconnect there is though. Okay, so we were alluding to this at lunch a little bit over cashew cheese and tea and gluten-free pancakes. So 3 things, like if someone was to walk away today to say, these are the 3 things that you need to know, and this is what you need to start doing right now so that you're relevant to the student constituents of the equation.
I think they definitely need to learn the basics of something like Google Analytics at least, so that they can be able to say, if I have a blog or I have a newsroom, where's this content going? What is it doing? Who's coming here? Who's reading what? Where did they come from? So you can at least do those basic things and learn in Google Analytics how to set goals within the analytics. So you can say, okay, if somebody arrives here, what do I want them to do? and then be able to track and say, well, did they go there? Did they watch that video? Did they look at that press release? Did they sign up for the news? I don't know, whatever your goals will be, but you can do that. And there actually is a PR dashboard in Google Analytics. So they can just do that. There's like only two or three things you should be watching. Mm-hmm. But just at least learn to do that. Learn to look at the analytics that are available in things like YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. They all have analytics. So apart from going to get involved in an expensive other analytics tool, of which there are many, little things like that would be one good starting point.
What about we were talking too about the writing skills and the argument of whether or not you can, well, first, if you can teach good writing or not, if you can teach things like critical thinking and strategy. I mean, so much of that is just, I think, kind of God-given talent and gifts, but how much of that can you teach? How important is it to a PR person to be able to write and think critically? It's really what it is, or what it should be, is applying critical thought to data.
Right. I think that maybe you can't teach somebody to be a brilliant strategist, but you certainly can learn to think more critically than you do right now, if you're not used to doing that. There are a lot of books and things that you could read on scenario planning, how people do things, how to think more logically, rather than just kind of blundering your way through life and going, oh, okay, well, whatever's in front of me today, I'll just do that. You have to learn to think a little bit down the line. People can learn to play chess. That's like strategic thinking. So I'm over here now and I want to go and take that guy's king. How am I going to get there? You can learn that kind of thinking. And maybe you won't be the world master, but you'll be better than you were today. So I would say, yes, you certainly should look at ways to increase your ability to think strategically into the future. Yeah. And maybe one day you could learn to play Go, which is the Japanese game that makes chess look silly.
That's for another
interview. Yeah.
No, it's true, because I think that there's this thought that you and I both have, or have had at different points in time, which is, I think I should learn how to code, because then I would be better at my job. And then you're thinking, but then I would be taken away from the stuff that I'm really good at. And so it really isn't necessary to go that far down the rabbit hole in terms of a skill set, but you do have to have the fundamentals so that you can speak the language. And so, even for me personally in my day-to-day, speaking to the CTO or the engineers and having the understanding of what it is they're saying conceptually. Right. And now more than ever, I think PR people are dealing with marketing and even analytics folks on a regular basis, because they need that data in order to do their job. Mm-hmm. So I think being able to speak, at least kind of in a rudimentary sense, about those things.
I definitely had that thought, and I looked at it and thought, I absolutely need to code to really get this stuff under my belt, but I so didn't want to do it. So I went into I'll be like Henry Ford, I'll hire someone to do that. But in the end, you're totally correct. You can't unless you have some basic understanding of what it is. How do I then tell you what it is I want you to do? I become totally reliant on you because you know it all and I know nothing. It's not a good position to be in. So I just think that you need to understand the very basics, at least, of coding. How does all this work? Why? You have to understand the internet. You've got to really know what all those things are, because otherwise you're dealing in something you don't understand.
Right.
And it becomes very difficult. If you don't know the medium, you don't know what's possible. And you'll never figure out what's coming or what might be coming, or what could be possible. Suddenly there'll be a new thing and you'll go, oh, what am I going to do today?
So scary.
Yeah.
So scary.
The other thing I think all PR people should do is find one or two sources that they can follow and read so that they can stay up to date. Because This stuff is changing so fast. It just can make your head spin.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, you talked about, I think I asked you this prior, but you talk about, bless you.
Thank you.
Is that a sneeze?
Yeah,
It was so cute.
Yeah, a
I
suppressed,
wish I sneeze like that.
a suppressed sneeze so it wouldn't make a noise.
But I do like the pointing on you're good with that. The pointing on the table.
Yes.
We're gonna know. We're gonna hear that. It's awesome. Yeah. You said Brian Solis is one of the people that you.
Yeah,
follow.
I've known Brian for about 10 years, and I do like to read his stuff. I like Lee Odin. He's more marketing than PR, but he does a lot of talks for PRSA, so he kind of understands what we're on about. Sometimes he's a little techie for us, but I don't think that's a bad techie.
Too
technical.
Techie. Ticky. Another South African word that I.
Well, it's
I do. Yeah, techie. Okay.
Techie.
I'm just gonna say ticky.
Ticky.
I like it. Okay, got it. Yeah, which is problematic because if you're too techie, you're not going to be able to reach the people that you're trying to impart information on.
Right.
It becomes a little, I think, difficult.
See, I read Write Web, but that is technical. Mm-hmm. It can get very technical.
You read your own blog, obviously.
Yes, of course.
I asked you before what you read, and you were like, I don't really read anything. I just mainly read my own blog. Me too. I do the same thing. I only read what things I write. It really expands.
I read.
It's called self-disrupt.
I spend a lot of time on Twitter, and I have a whole bunch of people that I follow, and I have them in different lists. I have a PR one, and a social media one, and a marketing one, and an analytics one. And so I follow those in my tweet deck. They're in columns.
Am I on a list? Or anything?
Yes.
I am. Which one am I on?
You're on my analytics list.
I made it to the I made the jump from PR to analytics.
You did.
That's amazing. I love it.
So I watch and I look and I see, and then as it goes past, as it scrolls, and I'll see, oh, that looks really interesting. Then I'll go and read that. So it's not like I'm reading your blog all the time or Brian's blog all the time. But if I have maybe like 20 or 30 of them in each list, I'm jumping around and looking at the stuff that I find interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of what I do too.
Yeah.
And just reading. I have found though that I have a couple different like quotes I get to my inbox every day, and then I have like the Google Yahoo News app on my phone that I read kind of when I'm just sitting waiting for stuff. But I found it's like there's just so much information out there that I actually become way less productive if I'm reading too much or if I'm consuming too much information. So I have to be really careful about that just in terms of being creative. And if you really want to spend time thinking about things and thinking strategically, you kind of have to be above all of that and able to look at, okay, where are the best pieces of information? Who are the most viable sources for the things that I need to know? And then the rest of it just kind of has to
that's
go away.
The thing.
I mean, it's tricky.
So for me, I'm always looking to see what's happening, what's new, so that I can stay up to date on everything. But for someone who's in the PR industry, they might not need so many different sources. If they can just find 2 or 3 people who are doing that and then read their stuff, that will keep you up to date without having to spend 2 hours every day doing this.
Right.
Yeah, so I think it's good that you should do that.
Any, see, what questions do I ask you? I have so many questions, but I think the biggest one is, how on earth did you manage to have 2 children who are in, like, entertainment? That's amazing. You know, like, remember the first time we did go to lunch and I said to you, I think you should be a stand-up comic. Yes. And you said, well, my son actually isn't. One of my sons is actually a stand-up comic. How is that? Were you like stage mommy? And
no.
By the way, we're gonna wrap it up in a couple minutes. But
no.
How are you as like an entertainment mom? Because we're in
not
LA.
At all. Not at all. Well, they were older by the time they got here.
Gotcha.
They were already like in just about. Mikey was 20, I think. Koki was 23. So they didn't need a stage mummy.
I mean, it would have been frightening if they had, but I mean, it does happen. I mean, have you heard of Beyonce?
Yeah. Koki started pretty early, but again, he left home and went to Johannesburg and just did his thing and did it on his own.
Mm-hmm.
He pretty much always knew that's what he wanted to do, but, you know, then when you're younger, being the stand-up comic at school isn't always the best thing.
So much trouble.
Oh, yeah.
Just constantly.
Yeah. But now he's in the UK and he's being a road comic. He's traveling a lot.
Is he going to have any US tour dates or anything?
He has to come back if he wants to keep his green card, so he's going to have to come back. Yeah.
Perfect for you.
Yes.
Yeah,
and Mike, you know, is in the play in Santa Monica, Train to Zakopane, so that's going to run until June.
Yeah, I saw it. It was so good.
Yeah.
It was really very intense.
Yes, very intense.
Very moving.
Yeah.
I would highly recommend it to anyone. I did tweet about it. I posted on Facebook.
Right.
But you have more Twitter followers than I do, so it's probably more meaningful coming from you. But
yeah, I've said, you know, I've put it out there a couple of times. If you're in LA,
have you ever thought about doing like stand-up comedy? I mean, not kidding.
I have a little bit here and there.
You have done it, or you've thought about it?
No, I've thought about it, and I've thought about starting a tweet feed about stupid things on TV.
Oh, there's so many though. It would just
because I sit here at night and I watch TV. And every now and again, I pass a comment and everyone in the room falls over and laughs. And I'm like, but I'm not being funny. I just made a comic. I mean, it just was a comment about something absolutely idiotic that somebody just said.
What's besides the whole reality show phenomenon, Kardashian, whatever you want to call it, what are some like really dumb things that you think are on TV?
Oh, well, the ads for a start.
Oh, well, yeah.
There was one the other night that just really, I was like, so I was really honest with my doctor. As opposed to what?
That red thing is not on my ass, it's on my face.
I normally go to my doctor and lie through my teeth. But today I was honest with my doctor. He said, what a fucking stupid thing to say.
Oh my God. Yeah, well, maybe you should write commercials then. Maybe that's the future.
Well, that's how I started in the business.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's so weird. I had no idea.
I was a copywriter in an ad agency.
I had no clue.
When I was 18.
But 19. You could write like better ads, is what I'm saying.
Yes. Please. Anybody pretty much could write better ads than on American TV. Anybody with a half a brain could write better ads.
But you specifically think American TV advertising is worse than everywhere else?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
It's really bad.
Oh.
Every now and again I see one that's good, and it's such a shock to me. I go, oh my God, that was a good commercial.
Like? You're
You're
literally like, I'm like, literally, wait, for example.
I can't remember.
I can't remember any.
I can't remember any, really, I can't.
I know. TV, see,
even the news. I said to my husband the other night, do you remember when we used to go to the movies and see Pathé News? It was real news.
Hey! You want to say hi? Speaking of your husband.
What were we watching? They had a thing about llamas running around and people chasing llamas. I was like, this is world news.
Oh my God.
Okay, guys.
Yeah, really important stuff. Well, thank you for your words of wisdom. Anything else you just want to get in? Just sitting on your chest, and then we can have our
little
ridiculously
sweeties.
Yum cupcakes.
Decadent sweeties. In terms of PR, I was really. It was, I think, almost shocking to me that PR people didn't jump onto this early on. It was so real to me that this was the future of communication, and that the internet was going to change everything. Even now when I speak at PR events and I ask the audience, have you ever read the Clue Train Manifesto? Nobody ever puts up their hand. How did you guys miss that? And why was it that for so many years when I spoke about these things, I would just kind of get this, the eyes glaze over and they'd begin to, you get this definite feeling she's a bit weird,
Yeah. Well, weird for other reasons, not for that.
No, but I really didn't think PR people would be so slow to adopt all this stuff.
And the measurement, analytics, digital.
Just digital in general.
Yeah, I agree.
And it pains me to see these kids coming out of school and still not being 100% prepared for what they're going to have to do.
Yeah, I think it is a huge problem. We actually created this this course called, it's basically like increasing your digital literacy in 30 days. And we've been passing it around to the agencies for like the really like communications managers. It's exactly what you're talking about. It's like get certified. We partnered with Google to do it, Google Analytics. But get your Google Analytics certification. I can't say Google Analytics certification. It's the cold medicine. Yeah. Google Analytics certification. There's a variety of other resources in there, but I think it's mandatory.
Totally.
It's mandatory.
Totally.
And understanding measurement, what you can measure, what you can't measure. And there's this great saying too. It's that a clever person has the right response. A wise person asks the right questions. And I think a lot of this is just about asking the right question. The question being, what is the outcome supposed to be? What are we looking to do here? What are we trying to accomplish? As opposed to like, you do the thing and then you react to it. And I think that's by and large what happens.
Totally.
And it's why we're chasing. It's like we're the people behind the train, like, grabbing on, like, we're here, but we're like really late. So we're going to try to like jump on at some point. And I think that is starting to shift, but it takes a conscious, mindful effort, and it takes work and the capacity to stretch beyond what we're used to.
So I do have my book, which is called Smart News, How to Write Branded Content That Gets Found and Shared. But even that, I found that people struggle to read something in text form and understand how to do it on a computer.
I see.
So I am putting together a video series where you can kind of like look over my shoulder and see how you do everything. Because you need the mass, you need the reality, you need to see it.
The visual, the dot connection.
Yeah, because otherwise I'm saying, go to this website and then click on this and then do that and then look up a keyword. It's all such a strange, unknown that it means nothing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, check it out. Smart News.
Yes.
Video version.
Yes.
Coming out
Yes.
to computer near you. And when is it launching? When you have it?
At the end of the summer, maybe.
Name your blog.
Proactivereport.com.
Name of your company is
Meritus Media.
Twitter handle.
Sally Falkow.
At Sally Falkow. Hashtag. Any hashtags you want to promote? PR measurement.
Yeah.
Time for cupcakes.
Yes.
Thanks, Sally.
Okay, terrific. We had fun.
Always. We always have fun.
Yes.